artist. So there is this English
Okay,
artist
ladies,
who,
we are live.
Oh, right. Okay, good.
Okay.
I will ask that question when we go live again.
Yes, yes.
We're live.
Namaskar and welcome on the eve of Indian independence. We here in the UK are bringing you a lovely, lovely chat. I say chat because it is not a show. It is not a program where some people talk and you just listen. It is a program that is interactive. My job, my name is Darshini Joshi, and my job is to basically bring inspirational people to a podium where they enlighten us, they educate us, they entertain us, and they spread awareness about topics that intrigue you as a human being. When I married my husband I'm not going to say when, but many years ago, the thing, as a British born Indian, he said to me, he gave me a little calendar, and on the calendar it read, above all else, I am Indian. As I say those lines, I still feel goosebumps that wherever you are, no matter which part of the universe you are, deep down inside, your Indianness is pretty much predominant in your being. Today, our panel discussion has actually 4, but at the moment we have 3 very talented, inspirational, and charismatic human beings, because they have brought their country to a global platform. Our first panelist is Miss Nilima Penumurthy. She has written various audiobooks, but more than that, she said to me before this conversation that she's a producer of audiobooks, and she has inspired children, which is the foundation of the human race, to be proud of their heritage and culture. The main book that we're going to talk about today is A Brief History of Indian Independence from the Mughals to the Mahatma. So I welcome you, Nilima, to this panel.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next guest is Shri Dr. Vijay Rana. He's a senior NRI journalist, a historian, a writer, a political critic, and ex-BBC London bureau chief, former radio editor of BBC Hindi service, editor at NRI FM. As a teacher of Hindi, very basic, but still working hard for 10 years, it is my great privilege, Dr. Rana, to welcome you to this panel.
Thank you.
Namaskar, और आपका तहे दिल से बहुत शुक्रिया है कि आप यहाँ आए और हमें अपने देश के बारे में बहुत कुछ बताएंगे. Thank you. And a third, but not the least, is guest is Manoshi Sinha. She's the author of several books, including Saffron Swords. As you can see, I'm wearing saffron. It inspires, and I'm going to ask Manoshi. So I'm going to start this conversation with Manoshi Sinha, who is in beautiful Sikkim. We might lose her because her reception might be a bit dodgy, but Manoshi Sinha is the author of several books, and she's an independent researcher in Indian history and ancient temples. She's the founder of myindiaglory.com and emagazine, which is obviously the future now, that presents about Bharat, our country, and from the ancient to the present, with special focus on history and heritage. When I started Sanskriti Guru, my main reason for living in the UK and starting Sanskriti Guru is asking all of you panelists this question. So we'll start with Dr. Vijay Rana. If I can see Manoshi, she can please jump in after Nilima. What makes you a proud Indian?
Well, almost everything, my existence. If we see India historically, it is one of the only copper age surviving civilization. Our belief system still continues. Our unity in diversity still continues. And some of the ideas, like from Bhagavad Gita, are the fundamental ideas on which you can create a very, very positive, enthusiastic and forward-looking society. There has been, there's a lot of historical baggage which we carry. So forget for that moment, because we are celebrating 50 years of our independence. Let us see what is positive there. And I remember listening to Dr. Karan Singh, which made me extremely proud of the way he summarized Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita talks about 4 yogas. Jnana Yoga, and it says that everything, whatever you do, you need knowledge first. Karma Yoga, the knowledge has to be put into action, otherwise it's useless, no point. And then you need devotion, that is, Bhakti Yoga kaha gaya hai, but devotion is a commitment, your passion to do the things, you have submitted yourself to the ultimate goal. So you need knowledge, action, devotion, and then what you need is mental and physical balance. So, and this is what—
Which yoga would that be?
The yoga, Raj Yoga, what you need is mental and physical balance. So
you said Gyan Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Raj Yoga.
Knowledge, forget about yogas for them, because these are young people. Just say they need first of thing, whatever they want to do, the first thing they would ever require is knowledge. And that knowledge, if they want to progress in life, that knowledge has to be put into action. Then you need karma yoga. And then if you have knowledge and you have action, but you are not devoted to your goal, if you have not submitted to your goal, you are not going to succeed. And all these energies can only be channelized if you have a healthy body and a healthy mind. So this is how Dr. Karan Singh summarized the essence of how India was made. It is one of those societies which has faced almost every kind of human catastrophe in the past. But India survives. Not only survives, India progresses. And that is the essence of that is these fundamental teachings which our ancient sages have taught us. And that has been the lifeline of India's vibrancy, India's strength, and India's positive and forward-looking outlook.
Thank you, Dr. Rana. I think that's a beautiful description of the essence of being Indian and how India came into existence in terms of its spirituality and its moral code. Before I talk to Nilima, I have a quick question for Aarush and Ayur. When you hear of these high-minded notions and principles of the essence of being Indian, or the existence of India in terms of its spirituality, what thoughts come to your mind? Is this going over your head, or do you think I'm going to delve into it and understand it a bit deeper? Anybody, Ayur or Ayush, whoever's ready, Aarush can answer. No? Okay, Mummy, Nilima, would you like to
answer? Yeah. I don't think I think about India and my Indianness so much in terms of spirituality, but actually more in terms of science. I've been interested in physics for a while, and I continue to be. And I look at the history of Indian contributions to maths and science, and look more upon that with pride rather than certain religious understandings.
Interesting. That's such a modern perspective. I have a son who's about the same age as you, and he's a maths and science scholar and completely identifies with him. Nilima, what is your understanding of India at the moment?
India at the moment, or basically what I gained from India, having grown up half of my life in India, is I think I'm a tolerant person to a large extent because of my upbringing in India, because India is like Europe. You have so many different languages. Each festival is actually celebrated in a different way. In different parts of India, people celebrate the same festival in a different way, but we all feel festive. So I think what I gathered by just observing the Indian society is just to thrive despite your differences or the way you manifest a certain thing, like a festival. So to me, India is a place which is full of tolerance, despite what it comes across to the world, because you just learn to live with so many differences and so many differentiations around you, but you thrive. You thrive despite the differences. This is what I always feel about India.
Now,
I don't know if it answers your question.
No, it answers. I want your interpretation of, first of all, on the year of Indian independence. There was no India before independence as one nation, and therefore our identity is pretty young compared to quite a few countries. So it's important that we as Indians know who we are and where we come from and what is our spirituality. So I really admire different perspectives on that. Manoshi, since you have done so much work with Indian history and heritage, are you there in our panel, and what would you like to contribute in terms of your study?
I think we've lost Manoshi.
Okay, so I will now come back to the book. Before I speak a lot more to the other panelists, I'm going to ask both the young men a question, and then I will ask Nilima to explain further. As your research went, young men, what was your understanding of the advent of the East India Company or the Mughals, or even going back to the Humayun and Babur to the present times? How did you see that journey, and what inspired you to even delve into Indian history?
So I suppose we start, at least in Indian education, with the East India Company already there. But while we were writing the book, we saw that the advent of the East India Company in India itself was kind of a really gradual process. It was almost like a sort of growing disease, because it was the weakness that was caused by the division of peoples in India that allowed it to actually grow and become strong. So we saw that our diversity as it is today, our unity, so to say, it's something we've learned from our weaknesses in the past, and that's something I think we learned to kind of get from what we did study back then.
Thank you. That's a very hopeful perspective. I do hope that as India becomes more powerful and more effective in its growth process, it still remains a secular, socialist, democratic republic. Nilima, what did you take away in your process of being the producer of Brief History of Indian Independence?
Firstly, thank you. I wanted to thank Rashmi Mishra as well for inviting me to the show. And to your question, what did I learn, or what did I sort of? Sorry, could you please repeat the question?
My question was, I'll ask you why I'm asking this question. It's such a challenging journey, as Vijayji had said before. When radio was all powerful, it was a medium where there was constant education to children and adults alike about everything Indian. Now, you have taken such a powerful subject, a brief history of Indian independence, and got young people involved. What was the process like, and what inspired you to do this?
Okay, let me start with what inspired me. So when I left India, obviously having grown up in India all my life, half of my life, I would, for the sake of convenience, I would call them stories. One was the Ramayana, which had left a huge impact on me, because there was Ramanand Sagar's Ramayana, which to me, I thought brought the whole nation together. It actually brought the whole nation to a standstill. And it actually, again, gave a platform for everybody to converse. So there was no discrimination. I mean, you could talk to anybody about what they saw in the previous episode on TV. So that had left an impact. I thought, I should create something that gives a common platform so that everybody can talk about the same thing. So that was one thing which I got on with my two sons, who, strangely enough, were quite happy to get on with it at the time 5 years ago. And the next thing that I was very, very keen on was the Indian independence. So having left India, having sort of, I don't know if I'll go back to India, But yeah, the way India won its independence from the British and the whole Indian independence movement has left a mark on me since my childhood, whether it's the patriotic songs. I mean, I'm driven more by songs. So whether it's the songs, it just would evoke a lot of sentimentality in me. And I thought it again connected the whole country. If there was a song, if it's the national anthem or the Vande Mataram, I just felt it connected people on the same at the same level. So when these were the two stories that I definitely wanted my children to understand to the best of my ability and to the best of their ability. So when I moved on from the Ramayana, the next story that I wanted to convey was the Indian independence. And when I asked Ayur, and by the time I came to this project, my older one had started university and he said he doesn't want to sort of be involved with the project anymore. So it was left, it was just Ayur, and he is a history buff. So I happened to be in India and I asked a friend of mine if she could put me in touch with a boy from India who would work along with Ayur. So my friend Babita had put me in touch with Aarush. We met Aarush and his parents, and they both seemed to sort of get on with it quite well. And it was a wonderful journey to see these two young boys who had not known each other previously get started on this project, collaborate, debate, and then again collaborate, draft the different versions. So yes, it is just my want to convey the story as briefly as possible. And to your question about why a brief history, as an audiobook publisher, I want to convey stories which are only an hour long. So it is, whatever I produce will always be an hour and a bit long, and it's up to people to delve into the details as and when they feel like. So this is a brief history, so they touch upon different parts of the journey in the Indian independence movement. And yeah.
That's very good to know. And I guess for most Indians who have been born and brought up in this country, they pretty much have not been taught anything to do with the colonial past. I know both my children delve into the 1066 Battle of Hastings, but they are not aware of when the East India Company actually entered. It was only me reading Far Pavilions, or at the moment I'm reading another a slightly fictional book, but they have slight truth to it, which I'll share the name with you, which the children were like, oh, really? Is this what happened? And that intrigues me. Dr. Rana, as a radio editor, over a long period of time living in this country, you must have come across a lot of different sentiments and changes in the Indian mindset of British Indians. What has your perspective been to maybe the generation of the 60s, 70s to the 2020s?
Well, very interesting question. In fact, if I look back at my own life, perhaps mine is the generation which has seen the biggest change in the human history. When I was a child, I was born in a village, and my early journeys to the city used to happen first in a bullock cart, then in a ghoda tanga, then in a bus, then I will arrive at my Nana's place, which was the district center. So, and then in the village school, we have used on slate and takhti, as we used to call it, just for a few months, and then we came to the city school. And I remember once my younger brother started crying that he wanted to see a car. And my grandma took him outside the colony, and she sat on the main road for hours, and there was no car. So that's where I'm talking about the 50s, early 50s, 53, 54, I'm talking about that. So that's what India was. Even in this country, perhaps there were not as many cars as there are now. And aeroplane journey was just, I think, a very, very few people could afford a journey by plane. Even cars were not there. So those were the 50s, and suddenly the civilization moved so fast, and the progress has been that today we are, in fact, we are taking tourists to space, and we are writing on iPads and computers and all these things, and people have simply forgotten. So the kind of change that we have seen, my father was born in bullock cart age and he died in the ambassador car age. So we have seen the change. And what we, and I would in fact suggest to Ayush and Aarush and Ayur that imagine what kind of India you will be living 50 years now. I'm sure you will be there in 2080 or 2075. So if the kind of change that we have seen, visualize that sort of change in your own lifetime, and you will come across a completely different world. Just a second.
Sorry, you have to unmute yourself, sir. Yeah.
Right. So what I'm saying is that the change is the only permanent thing in life. What happens to a lot of people is that they spend a lot of energy in resisting the change. Now the question is, that how could you moderate and influence the change? That is the important thing. Rather than flowing with the change, I would not say flow. Just accept whatever is coming to your life. No, you have to discern. You have to understand what is good and what is bad. And this is where I say that India, it may not give you prosperity. The spirituality, as we were talking about, but some of the very fundamental ideas of human progress come from Indian sages and rishis and Indian ancient scriptures. I remember Buddha, a remarkable personality, and I think you people should read. At one place he says, Atma Deepo Bhava. Be light to yourself. That you have to see, you have to have a light within, so that you can look at the world, so that you are not lost in the darkness. Then he said something very interesting thing. वीणा की तारों को इतना न कसो कि वो टूट जाएं, और उनको इतना ढीला न छोड़ो कि उनमें से सुर न निकले. Now this is something very interesting. This is about the middle path. Don't push yourself to the extent that you break. And a lot of people break, and this has happened in India quite a lot. That people work so hard because there's so much struggle in India that they do not achieve their best. And some people are so relaxed that they hardly want to do anything. So they do not, again, produce their best. So what India teaches us is some of these fundamental ideas of human growth. And I'm not preaching spirituality. I'm preaching I'm telling you about human development. And there's a lot of it about it. You read Tulsi, you read Valmiki Ramayana, as Nilima just mentioned it. Every paragraph, you will find something which will add to your personality, which will show you a new way. And that has to be a part of your mental makeup. That if you want to go ahead, you have to welcome change rather than resist change. But that change has to be molded, modified, reformed according to your needs, according to your passions, according to your capacities. So that is what India, in a way, tells us.
So with that in mind, I have a question for Nilima. When you sort of discussed the project about the brief history of Indian independence, I haven't had the opportunity to hear the audiobook, and you're going to share an excerpt of it, and then I will go away and listen, and most of us who are on this show will listen as well. Where did you decide to start from, and where was it that the children picked up the threads of India's journey?
So basically, again, having come to Britain 24 years ago, I've genuinely been fascinated by East India Company. I thought it is amazing to see one small company become such a conglomerate.
Can I tell you something interesting? Do you know who owns East India Company now?
Yeah, I know, it's an Indian.
It's an Indian.
Right?
So,
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So basically,
and actually, he's actually someone I know really well, and he does great work to introduce the Guineas, to have all sorts of different things. And it's quite ironic that the East India Company is actually now owned by an Indian from India.
No,
So
I was quite keen to send the link of the audiobook to the person. I thought I had, I'm not sure if I have already. Now, to your question, Darshini, so as the producer, I mean, as I mentioned just a little while ago, I'm quite keen to convey the stories that I want to convey within an hour. At the most, an hour and 15 minutes, no more than that. So given the constraint that a huge part of world history, 400, 500-year-old history, has to be conveyed so succinctly, we had to start somewhere. So I thought, when I approached the boys, I said, why don't you start at a point where East India enters India? I mean, having lived in Britain for this long, East India Company is absolutely fascinating. So therefore, to connect these two cultures, Britain and India, East India Company did that. So East India, on a positive note, well, if you want to add a positive.
I'm going to stop you there, and I'm going to ask Aarush and Ayur this question. Where does East India Company come into how does your story start? How did you start the East India journey? What was it called before it was called East India Company?
So we do start the whole audiobook like kind of a ways back before the East India Company actually comes to India. We talk about the Mughals mainly because it was the fall of the Mughals that allowed the East India Company to enter India. So we start the East India Company really with Thomas Roe. So that's where it all begins, and then we continue that with Bengal, and then like the eventual transition of power.
And do you know what the East India Company was called before it was called East India Company?
It was like the Company of London Trading Merchants.
That's a good attempt. Vijay Rana ji, would you like to tell us what it was called before it was called the East India Company?
No, I even if I've read it, I can't remember it. Frankly speaking. But coming to the book, Nilima sent me some of the link, the link on, and I heard a few chapters. I couldn't, devote much time. And it's really a very good attempt. And what is creditable is that Indian history is extremely complex, and explaining Marathas and advent of the British and then this freedom struggle. It's not an easy task. And giving that, because I have read history, there's so many strands and sub-strands, and where you are lost, you never know. So it is a remarkable attempt to summarize Indian history so well. Is really a very, very good attempt.
I will tell you what it was called in a minute. Would you like to actually play a little bit of the audio before we continue this?
So I have to share, right? So let me see how it works. Hope I can get on with it. So let me, sorry.
So friends who have just joined in, whilst Nilima is just going to play an excerpt from her audiobook. The book is called A Brief History of Indian Independence from the Mughals to the Mahatma. On the eve of Indian independence, I think we finished 74 years. I think it's pretty opportune for us to play something by young blood. When I say young blood is because हमारे कल के जो सूत्रधार होंगे वो हमारे आज के बच्चे हैं तो I think it is quite apt that they have spoken about India. And Nilima, when you're ready, please feel free to play it.
Independence. Despite the tragic circumstances, independence itself was a hope, a promise unlike any other to the Indian people. On the 15th of August 1947, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru was sworn in as the first Prime Minister of India. He proclaimed,
"Long years ago, we made a tryst with destiny, and now the time comes when we shall redeem our pledge, not wholly or in full measure, but very substantially. At the stroke of the midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom."
And indeed, when the tricolour was raised atop India Gate to the swell of the national anthem, the truth in his words was apparent. India, it seemed to say. What an idea.
Yep. I thought that was a good one. We have both the voices, and it is India's Independence Day anyway. So yeah. Rather India's Independence Eve.
And I would like to ask and request Dr. Vijay Rana to formally say that the audiobook is launched, and we all give a big round of applause. Yes, sir. Go ahead. Unmute. We can't hear you, sir. Unmute. Yeah.
Thank you for this honor. I wasn't ready for it, and it has been a great pleasure to listen to this small extract. And I also had a few chapters of it last night. It's a remarkable attempt to express and to summarize Indian history, which is extremely complicated and huge in such a short introductory book. So let us launch this book collectively and clap for these young people who have presented it so beautifully. Thank you, Nilima, and thank you, Ayur, and thank you, Aarush. Well
Thank
done.
you, Ranaji. That is incredibly kind of you to say all those words. But yeah, honestly, it has been it's just a moment of act of pride to be able to do this in my lifetime.
Thanks.
I think Tryst with Destiny, that speech by Pandit Nehru is probably as powerful in my perspective, and I'm sure a lot of people might have a different perspective, but I believe that it's very nice coming from the youth's mouth, so that our history stays alive today, which is quite good, and it's very inspirational for a lot of young children who will listen to you, and that's amazing.
Darshini, we have Sarika Handa here, who's going to play a small message from Chayaa. So Chayaa sent a message that she's unwell, but we have a small video to play. And if you could introduce what Chayaa does, that'll be nice. And then we can play the video. Okay, Sarika Handa has started the video, and then you can talk a little bit about Chayaa.
Today, women in Bharat form a powerful force ready to overcome challenges they face as a result of thousands of years of foreign rule and exploitation within. The status of women in the Indian society has undergone a drastic change in the past few decades. From being a mere homemaker to working as a dynamic multitasking individual, women in Bharat have been able to successfully carve a niche for themselves and leave behind a mark in various spheres of life, including in professions that are male-dominated. Women are now playing a crucial role in the growth of the economy and have made a substantial impact and achieved success across all sectors. Indian society needs to accept, appreciate, associate, admire, and encourage the accomplishment of Indian women and their contribution to the society. Where the ladies are respected, there the gods reside. Manusmriti. Dhanyavad.
So Chayaa Nanjappa, who Sarika's played a video from, is an award-winning first-generation rural woman entrepreneur, and she's also a founder and managing partner of Brand Nectar Fresh. It is a unit of the Khadi Village Board. So basically, she has a rural network that provides empowerment and employment to rural and tribal folk and farmers in India. So in some respect, I think it's a great thing that we have someone who does work on the field. We just not sat at home chanting Mera Bharat Mahan, lekin Bharat ke liye kuch karna to hai nahi. So that is actually, you put you practice what you preach. So we're very proud of you, Chayaa, and I hope you feel better, and thank you for sharing your message. It was used, just so you know, the East India Company was called John Company.
Called what? Sorry?
John. John, John Company, or Company Bahadur. So you can, if I can find the paragraph from the book, I will read it to you, but it's interesting, the journey that happened over the last 400 years. As we discover the story of global Indians now, from back 400 years to today, Dr. Rana, when you were as the former head of BBC Hindi service, and what you see today, how has the global Indian changed? I know you said that there were 29 million listeners in the time that you were the head, but what were their mindset like? What was their thought process like? Were they stuck in a time warp, or were they changing with times?
Let me talk to you about there have been different patterns of migration to different countries from India. After independence, I'm talking about. There was a time in the 1962, I remember when the India-China war happened. I met some of the one journalist who was in Kenya at that time, and he went to India to cover that war. So the impression which I got from him was that one of the biggest NRI communities in those days was living in East Africa, especially Kenya was. And I remember there was a captain of Kenyan hockey team which went to Olympics, one of these, I think it was Montreal or something else. He was called as Avatar Singh. So that was the hub of NRIs. And a lot of Sikhs went there, a lot of Gujaratis went there. But then there were quite a lot of people who were taken out by the British as laborers to work in agriculture in different far off land like Mauritius. They took them to, and that was early 20th century. They took them to even the 19th century, later 19th century. They took them to places like South Africa. They brought them to Africa, Kenya. Mauritius was another, Fiji was another place, Suriname was Trinidad and Tobago. So these people were, and there's a very, very interesting story. I interviewed some of the people from Fiji. Would you believe that the first about 100 people or 160 people which went in that ship in 1896 or some time, you know what they took with them? They took with them a dholak and 4 copies of Ramcharitmanas. And interestingly, they still carry that tradition. Every Tuesday in Fiji, in almost every temple and community hall, they sit together with dholak, and in the same style which was in early 20th century, they sing Ramcharitmanas in the same style. In fact, they send me some of their videos. There are about more than 106 groups who every Tuesday assemble and sing Ramcharitmanas in the same manner. So this is how Indians started coming out. And the British were really, really brutal with them. The rule was that if they have to work, they will give them return fare home only if they work there 10 years. And most of the people in 10 years were so poverty-ridden, broken physically and mentally, that none of them wanted to come back to India. So these people are still living. I met some of them in one of the Pravasi Divas. They even don't know.
Sorry, which time frame are you talking about? Is this the 60s?
Yeah, the indentured labor thing, it started about 1890s. Around 1890. The Fiji, if I remember the date correctly, was 1896 when the first ship was taken there. And they still make almost a majority, the local population is virtually half and half, Indians and as well as the local. So
are you saying that I would flash forward to say 1960s and 70s when you were working.
I'm coming to that. Yes. So, and after that, then the closest place was after independence was Kenya. The first wave of migration happened there. Around the 60s, late 50s and 60s, people started coming to this country. And I worked on oral history. In fact, I met the guy who bought first property in Southall. So around the 50s, he said that he bought that property in 1951, the year I was born, on the Baisakhi Day. And it used to be very interesting. The house was bought for 150 pounds. Okay. And
was he Punjabi or was he Gujarati?
He was a Punjabi. I can't remember because I did an interview long time back with him. I can't remember his name. Tanna, he was Tanna. I met this guy, and there's a very funny story. It's a very interesting story. The early migration that happened to England was in East London, near Petticoat Lane and all these areas. They used to live there. And this guy told me a lovely story that one day a van stopped in their locality, and they said, we need sick people, Sikhs. So, and then they asked, what do you want them? So he said, we are making a film, and some of the old timers must have seen this Carry On films, Up the Khyber and that sort of film. So and they said that they have to take part in one of the shootings that we are doing in Ealing studio. So we'll take you from here to Ealing, and when we come back, we'll give you 20 pounds in a day. I remember in those days, the weekly wages were £6. So they were very happy. They all wanted to come with them. So they picked up six people who are really strong and tall, and they brought him to Ealing studio. And then the role was that Afghans attack a British cantonment in Afghanistan. And these six, as loyal soldiers of the British, have to save the lives of the women. So they have to lift the British women and jump across a wall and save them from the Afghan attackers. So that was the scene they have today. And they said we were so nervous because we have never touched a British woman. So we always fumble. We'll do one or the other mistake. So we took 1 week to film that simple scene, which was hardly 30-40 seconds. And every day they'll give us 20 pounds. So that is how I got about 140 pounds for 1 week's wages. And immediately I went to the bank manager and I said, look, I've got some money now and I want to buy the property. So that is how the first house was bought in Southall. But in the 60s, you remember that India was in dire states. There was a lot of poverty. There were hardly any jobs. So a lot of adventurous people from Punjab wanted to come to this country. So in the 60s, a lot of Sikhs came from, or Punjabis came from Punjab. And that is how the Southall started growing. And they did the dirtiest jobs that were available. There were two major factories in and around this area. One was called as a Southall rubber factory. And what was the Southall? They used to make this, the car floors, pedestal, things. And the making in a rubber factory, which is black and, black dust is, they used to be completely, by the time they go at the end of their shift, they were completely blackened. And they didn't have any women with them because they were laborers. They came without their wives and families. So 6 or 7 people will live in one property. And some of them were illiterate. So what they will do is and all the houses, if you see the terraced housing in this country, they look the same. And if they were coming at about 8 o'clock in the winter, they will not even be able to recognize which is their house. So they will put up a kind of a brick in front of their house or something else. And some of the, kind of naughty children, they understood what these people do. So they will change the brick from one house to the other house.
So in terms of your interaction with these initial immigrants to the Great Britain, your impression of them seems to be that they were quite naive, they were slightly poorer, they were very simple.
Yeah, they're very simple, very poor, but they really, really worked hard and they wanted to build. They were ambitious. Remember, they were very ambitious. And most of them ended up in a living a very, very prosperous and successful life.
So with that in mind, I have a question for the boys and Nirima. When you did your research on the Mughals, so we have the East India Company who use you mentioned they use their wits, their acumen, their business knowledge, and India's segregated state to come to this country and rule. What was your interpretation of the Mughals, and do you think, what have you learned and what would you like to share with us today about their advent to India?
Their
advent to India.
Their what?
Coming.
What did India gain from the Mughals?
No. What did they do? What did the Mughals do when they came to India, and how did it impact India as a nation? What is your understanding of the book?
Aarush, would you like to take it?
Yeah, sure. So obviously the Mughals did give us a lot. There's the obvious examples of architecture, like the Red Fort as you see behind Ayur, and then they gave us some good rulers as well. Although they did give us bad ones. There was Aurangzeb, intolerant rulers there. But then we did get rulers such as Akbar, and then in his time there was obviously a lot of progression in multiple areas, arts, sciences, and the courtiers of his time, I think they were called the 9 gems. So there was progression, but obviously then later on, after the good rulers, you could say, the intolerant rulers sort of created dissent in the whole system that they ruled under, right? So that was, I think, perhaps one of the reasons why we did have the dissent amongst the people, which is again another reason the East India Company did come in. So that is one of the things they did give us. They gave us progression for a certain period, the golden age as we called it, but then they were the cause of the rise and fall of the India as we knew it then.
Ayur, do you have anything to add to what Aarush said?
There were some cultural developments, like the sitara was invented during the Mughal times, but the most important thing was there were some decades of tolerance and relative peace, but it was sort of a situation like the Roman Empire where they got too big, and then the resulting collapse left the pieces easy to pick up for the British.
At this point, actually, I'd like to sort of make a disclaimer, because as much as the boys have researched the topics, they're still very young. And when I conveyed the project to them, it was never meant to evoke any kind of controversy. It is a journey. It is the Indian independence movement journey that they have conveyed succinctly through the audiobook. So I know and different aspects of the movement can evoke a lot of response from the audiences or the listeners, but the intention was just to convey the movement, not necessarily with any sort of political.
Absolutely. With any topic, I always believe that you can take a twist to it. It could be a simple thing like a piece of meat. That could start a massive controversy. No, I think the important
they're only
thing
17 years old. Both boys are only 17 years old. So they have done their research. They have put it forward the way they have understood it.
And who wrote the book?
Pardon?
Who wrote it? I know did they write it themselves and read it out themselves?
The boys together. So the prologue was written by Ayur, epilogue by Aarush. The 7 chapters, they collaborated over a period of an year or more, over Skype and Zoom. So they, as I said, as I mentioned, I had set them a task, which is to start the journey from the time East India Company enters India, and then end with India winning its independence. So what they covered in between was their journey, was what they thought was important. For example, I know both boys wanted to include a few more characters or incidents. Aarush can sort of talk about what he thought he couldn't include. Similarly, Ayur had a couple of personalities that he wanted to include, but there was no scope because they were exceeding the limit that I had set out for them, which was an hour-long narration. So Aarush, do you want to let everyone know what you thought was missing from your point of view?
Kind of going on from what you said about it not being political, there is the whole thing about trying to be fair, right? Because there are two parties in this, the whole journey of Indian independence. And there are many times in which neither side really came out as a better man, right? And trying to kind of give this whole balanced view of the events that occurred, it was difficult because we had to condense our thoughts and views on the events like to a very small amount. For example, there was during the Sepoy Mutiny, there was an event that I wanted to include, the Siege of Kanpur, which kind of gave you perspective as to how there were also Indian atrocities committed. And so that was one of the kind of things. It was obviously when we did go on, we found it was an unnecessarily detailed given the level of abstraction we were working at. But yeah, there were like some things like that. It was events that I thought could kind of give people a more balanced perspective of the whole idea of Indian independence.
Ayur, you wanted to include some personalities?
It's another one that doesn't perhaps paint the Indian movement in the best light, because I wanted to include some parts about Subhash Chandra Bose, but of course he became friendly with Nazi leaders and Japanese leaders during World War II, who obviously don't represent the type of morals that India does today. But we felt that it was important to tell the whole story. And there were we used a variety of sources that had varying degrees of pro-India, anti-India bias. And so we collated them and we tried to be as objective as possible in terms of determining what actually happened. But of course, we weren't there. So the sources and first-hand accounts were the best there are.
I think the important thing that both you boys and Nilima has done is basically brought history to history available to people that would like to listen to it in a different format. So I think the most important thing, I'm sure Vijay Rana ji would also agree, is as a historian, the main job of a historian is to tell history as you are aware of what it is. The interpretation can be up to the audiences and each individuals. I'm sure with all the listeners that you had of your radio programs, you'd have some listeners who might absolutely hate what you're bringing to the podium. And there might be some who have enjoyed it over the years and have encouraged you to grow. I mean, I think that the important thing is that you are bringing history to the present and the modern times, and that is very important. I have one question before I ask Dr. Rana some more questions to Aarush. Aarush, are you from India?
Yeah, I am. I was born here and I've lived here, I think, most of my life.
Which part of India are you from?
I'm from Maharashtra.
Okay, so my question to you is, do you, I know that Ayur, who's from Great Britain, has a different perspective to the East India Company and worries about people like Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, who were, you know, controversial to the world, but for Indians, we are very proud of what he has achieved. So, Aarush, do you find that history is still taught with a more global perspective, or is it still rote learning that we do?
Well, I suppose since I started doing this book, my knowledge of Indian independence as it has grown has not been really influenced by myself being an Indian. But as it is taught in schools, I was in a CBSE school for 2 years. And after that, I think for 4 years, I wasn't, but we still learned from the NCERT syllabus. So it is certainly kind of an Indian bias on that. There's a lot of things we don't learn about. Like I said, there is certainly some sort of an effort to paint Indians in the best light, and it's not always full information. So while it's not like propaganda, I'd say, I think there is a lot that could be done to kind of give people a clearer picture of how Indian independence worked, mainly because it's something that we can actually learn from, and having all the information gives us like a clear idea of like the motivations and the principles behind the events. So.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Ranaji, you have some thoughts on history?
Yes, this thing has been very debatable in India. What kind of history? In fact, what has happened is that the history writing in India is done from the, how to settle our old political scores now and what society needs now. And in that process, we have tried to hide a lot of things from Indians. Let me say it frankly, the Indian history in India has been written largely by two angles. One is colonial angle, other one is the leftist angle. And they have this great idea that through history, we have to somehow inculcate or preserve the Indian unity. But Indian history has been extremely fractious. And like say, take for example, Akbar. The general impression is he was a very tolerant guy and all these things. Now, if you see, Akbar, he ruled almost more than 50 years. And what happens in the first part of his reign, he's fighting wars from Bengal to Gujarat, from, Chittor. And in fact, his siege of Chittor is the bloodiest chapter of Indian history. 40,000 people, the men, because he laid the siege for 6 months. So all the fighting men have died. So who we find? He finds women, children, and elderly people in the fort. And then there's a huge massacre. So the first part of Akbar's reign is extremely brutal. You go to Gujarat, and it's not about Hindus and Muslims, even against the Muslim rulers, like, this guy from Mandu, he's totally unforgiving. A lot of bloodshed happens. And once he consolidates his empire, remember, Jahangir didn't fight as many wars. Shah Jahan didn't fight because he didn't need to, because the entire empire was built by Akbar. So in the first part of his reign, he's waging wars all across India, and wars are never without bloodshed. So, and then particular chapter, this chapter of Chittor is really, really cruel. And a lot of Indian historians completely shy away. In history books, you will not find Siege of Chittor, especially in the school books, never, ever. So, and then in the second part, once he's consolidated, he wants everybody to live peacefully, happily, with mutual trust and everything, which every king wants. Now, and a lot of is made of his great religion he wanted to start, called as Deen-e-Ilahi. You will be surprised to know that none of his Muslim courtiers ever accepted, but maybe exceptionally some have done. There were only 18 of his courtiers who accepted Deen-e-Ilahi. And most of them were Hindus, because the sword was there. If you don't accept, then the king will be angry with us, and then everything will be. But there was a lot of opposition by the Muslim courtiers, and Deen-e-Ilahi was just existed on his mind or in his Akbarnama, that's it. It was never ever a social movement. The historians don't tell us. I give you another example. Let us say Indus Valley civilization and Aryan civilization. We have been told that Aryans came from Central Asia, and then they displaced the people who were original inhabitants to the South India. So those were Dravids, and Aryans, North Indians are from Aryans, and South Indians are the Dravids. And because they were the original Dravids were the original inhabitant of India, they have been pushed to South India. Absolute pack of lies. First of all, Indus, and then they say they killed the Indus Valley. Indus Valley vanished, either due to war or due to ecological reasons. Interestingly, there is not one trace of any vandalism, war, or destruction in any of the Indus Valley cities. Not a single. Even they found about 155 skeletons. Not one skeleton has a mark of arms injury. So these people were dying their natural death. There was no such thing as Aryan invasion that pushed the people. So this history has been written by colonial masters or by leftist historians who somehow have this concern that India's Hindu past has to be denigrated. All that you read about in NCERT books is that Hindus were a kind of discriminatory people. They were Brahminical people and they have suppressed the Dalits and all these things. This, nobody's saying that these differences did not exist. They exist in every society, ancient society. But the kind of history which has been told, the history is just to correct, somehow to correct our own political problems today. So there would have been, I think in your future project, you will have to find out a way to tell the truth. Because if you hide the truth, which, and I'll give you another example. In the Indus Valley civilization, we are told that Indus is a Harappa and Mohenjo-daro and some cities across the Indus. Now we have excavated Indus Valley civilization up to Meerut, Sanauli, where we have found a chariot. So Sanauli is Meerut, this is Western Uttar Pradesh. We have Indus Valley sites in Himachal Pradesh and in Kashmir. We have Indus Valley sites in Kutch and Gujarat, in Gujarat and Dholavira, all these people. So we had a civilization which was spreading from Mehrangarh, which is on the border of Afghanistan, from Afghanistan to Kutch, from Afghanistan to Meerut, Western UP. And interestingly, this is something very interesting. Then the Aryan civilization come for about 1,000 years or so, as these people have told. But for me, it was, I would say there was no separate Indus Valley civilization or Aryan. So there was a continuous growth. We have found about 1,500 cities, Rakhi Gadi, Dholavera, Kalibanga, also 1,500 sites where there were big cities, small towns, maybe villages, which we haven't found so far. And then we come to Mahabharat age. We found 16 Janapadas. That means people from Kandhar to Bengal, Mahabharat, you must have read it. And then come the Ramayana age. There's Lord Ram going up to South India and Sri Lanka. So basically and this composite view of a larger Indian civilization, which is spread from the borders of Afghanistan to Sri Lanka or to Bengal, has not still reached in our history books. We are still being taught that, yes, there was an Indus Valley civilization which somehow disappeared and people migrated to South India. Then came Aryans from Iran or Central Asia. They were cattle herders and they never wanted to live in big cities. So they lived in ashrams and small cities and jungles. And then they created, later on, two different civilizations appeared. One was Dravid civilization, one was other. So this is the view, which was a view which Jawaharlal Nehru took when he was writing his Discovery of India in 1936 or 46. So what I would, the task before you, if you are interested in history, you have to bring the latest historical research into your, rather than, picking up the established models of history and just going with them because there will be controversy. No, there is a clever way of avoiding controversy and still speaking the truth. So somehow that is the task ahead, which you people have to fulfill.
I think that's wonderfully said. When I went to India last, I did see the Tashkent files, and I thought that it took great courage to investigate that historic aspect. I mean, it is history.
Can I just come in, Darshini? Somebody has asked a question, did Nehru write Discovery of India? Or it was... Oh,
I saw that.
Yeah. It's a very interesting question. Let me tell you something very interesting fact, which Professor Judith Brown has written in her book. Nehru was really, really lucky when he was sent to jail twice, 30s and 40s. Once he wrote his own autobiography in the first stint, and the second 3 years jail term, he wrote this Discovery of India. Nehru himself writes that he would be given a separate quarter, which normally belonged to the deputy jailer or somebody, So he will have his separate jail quarter where he could grow flowers and where he walked 5 miles in a day. He took a walk in the jail, and his friends will continuously send him books. So he collected a library of 350 books in his jail quarter. I wish everybody has such a kind of nice and cozy and comfortable jail. And with these 350 books served as the secondary sources of history. People take Nehru's, it's a great book. There's no doubt every Indian must read Discovery of India, but they should read with some kind of a, first of all, it is a very Anglicized way because the books were mostly written by English people, which he was getting, in the 30s and 40s. So, his knowledge was based on the secondary sources, which were inevitably written by foreigners. And that is why he takes a very Anglicized view of Indian history. He himself wrote, he was really a good writer, and there's a consistently writing style that we see in letter to the chief ministers. Nehru used to write a lot. And both Nehru and Gandhi, would you believe that Gandhi's collected works in 102 volumes, that is 55,000 pages. Gandhi wrote all his life, Gandhi, as I said, Gandhi was the greatest journalist. All his life, he published a newspaper, which used to be about 16 to 20 pages, and 2/3 of the paper he will write himself.
What was the newspaper called again? Remind us.
There were 4 newspapers he published. One was in Gujarati, it was Harijan and Young India. One paper he published in South Africa. And all these papers are available. Most of his writings is available in collected works of Mahatma Gandhi that are on internet. So Gandhi's works, collected works of Mahatma Gandhi.
Collected works of Mahatma Gandhi. That's an interesting one. One should reread The Discovery of India and the collected works of Mahatma Gandhi. That would be really good. I would like to just emphasize something on this platform. Mr. Mahesh, or is it Manish Maheshwar, we would humbly say that the reason why Inspiring Indian Women does events such as what we are doing right now on the eve of independence is to celebrate our history, heritage, culture, and our diversity. There is politics, there is strong opinions, there is corruption, there is great loss in growth because there is unfairness. We could take the positive and move on, or we could dwell on the controversy. My belief is that Inspiring Indian Women's job and my job, Darshini Joshi, is to bring India's goodness, purity, spirituality, history and heritage and culture to the British people. There is bad to what happens in India. We saw a film recently called Under Siege or something with Akshay Khanna, which talks about 4 terrorists attacking a temple in Gujarat, and India is unable to deal with it, like is not sending helicopters and is not having Navy SEAL jumping and fighting. Because that is what India is, and with its simplicity, there is also going to be some controversy. So with my humble opinion is that jahan aap ek Q&A kar rahe ho, so there has to be a sense of question to the panelists about what they are talking, not about the veracity of history. So,
can I just share something that has come through in an email from a person called Emma Scott. Emma Scott is the director, producer of an organization called Caliber UK. Caliber UK is an organization that shares audiobooks to the visually challenged and to people who have muscular problems. So they can't hold a book because they have muscular problems. They can't read because they are visually challenged. So I had donated the Ramayana to them, and now I sent them a copy of the Indian Independence. So here is a review that I'd like to share only because it's genuinely worth sharing. So she writes, Emma Scott writes from Caliber, this is a thoroughly interesting and accessible audiobook compressing the history into a bite-sized, informative narrative without shying away from the upsets of the conflicts that occurred throughout this period. I had very limited knowledge of this area of history before and have been enlightened about several parts of it, such as the Sepoy Mutiny. while also increasing my understanding about Mahatma Gandhi, all of which has made me want to go on and do more research, which for me is always the sign of a good book. Well, she goes on to write, the clear and engaging narration made it a very enjoyable listen, and it serves to be a very good introduction to this part of history, which would appeal to anyone. So I would recommend this to young and old alike. So basically, I think through this, by sharing this, what I'm trying to convey is that what the boys have written is just a brief introduction. As Dr. Rana mentioned, it's a vast topic covered over 500 years at a minimum. So if it's about the audiobook, it is literally a brief introduction, and people who are keen to explore different parts of the journey before India won its independence are obviously free to explore several different books which have been written in a lot of detail. So yeah, thank you for giving me the time to share this review.
I think that's well said, and I would like to thank both the boys for making a great contribution in exploring and researching India's varied past. Before we finish today's program, I would like to also say that I see Chayaa Nanjappa, who has logged in. Chayaa, we did play your video where you talked about your work and the aim behind setting up a Nectar Fresh. Would you like to say a few words before we finish today's program?
Well, I'm extremely sorry that I could not be there because I was
No, please don't apologize. Share with us your thoughts now on why you started Nectar Fresh and the unit of Khadi and Village Board. How do you work with them and what do you do?
Well, I'm a rural social entrepreneur. My brand Nectar Fresh is considered as one of the most successful units of the Khadi and Village Industries Commission. Currently, I could be one of the largest buyers of tribal honey in the country. My entire team is uneducated or undereducated rural folk, and they have been trained to manufacture products that are world class, that meets the specification of international market. And the biggest satisfaction is, in a small way, I have been able to stop the I would say migration of rural folk to cities. And I personally feel women in rural Bharat have been contributing tremendously, and their times of recognition is coming now. And Bharat, in all sense, is treading towards becoming a Vishwaguru.
Oh, that's such wonderful words. Chayaa ji, where are you based?
I am based out of Mysore. I am basically from a place called Coorg in Karnataka. I am
a beautiful hill station as well.
Yes, it is. I'm a Coorg, and then we are based out of Mysore. And right now, after my growth in honey, to support small farmers, we have diversified into coffee, apple cider vinegar, mother vinegar, and so many other products. So from Mysore, our collection point and from particular small farmers is from across the country. And the biggest satisfaction is that a small-scale social enterprise is doing its bit in transforming lives in rural Bharat.
Oh, I would like to congratulate you on this amazing venture. Rashmi and her entire team are starting this new venture, which is Inspiring Indian Women's e-outlet. And there's a launch for it tomorrow. Chayaa, if you can register and make sure that your products are available to a global audience, I'm sure the team will be able to support you, even if it starts from a small step. Like they say, a small step for you will be a giant leap for the Indian subcontinent to bring their local produce to a global market in the naturalist way possible. So Rashmi, please follow up and see if you can bring this wonderful lady and her venture to the UK.
Yes, definitely. We've been talking about it, and it's indeed a great privilege to connect with Chayaa. One of the main objectives of IIW outlet is to connect with the rural India to bring in the empowerment in real sense to the ladies at ground level, in the villages, in the outskirts of far-flung villages. You know, we want to bring them all overboard of IIW outlets. So fingers crossed. There's a long journey. We need a lot of good wishes, and we will. Yes.
On that good note, I would like to now say thank you to Dr. Vijay Rana for sharing his knowledge. I think maybe Ranaji, we can go through different parts of Indian history with you and discuss the mammoths of knowledge that comes out from you. I have so many questions. So for today, I would just like to say thank you on behalf of all of the IIW team and myself for being a part of this Eve of Independence show. I would also like to say thank you to Nilima Pinamurthy and Aarush and Ayur for venturing into this brave area of exploring and bringing India's history, however colored it is, to the global audiences. So a big pat on your back for young men like you to bring that, and a great well done for you, Nilima, for encouraging your children to be proud to be Indian. When I started Sanskriti Guru about 10 years ago, I felt as if, you know, there's nothing better than to embrace Indian arts and culture, but it's a difficult one. You know, now my children sometimes, you know, want to celebrate, sometimes not so. But when they actually investigate and study India, it's a much better way of being connected to your roots. So great job. Rashmi Mishra, I would like you to say a few words before I say goodbye.
I think you have to just mute yourself. It's echoing there. Okay, I just want one last line from the two young boys here, the generation next. One line about India. What do you think? Today's India, Bharat at 75. Quick. Anybody? Aarush, Ayur, quick. Or one word. What do you feel about India?
A lot of progress, still a long way to go.
I'd say opportunity.
Very thoughtful.
Okay. Okay, so wishing Bharat 75 years of birthday today, 75 years old. Thank you so much, Darshini Joshi, the host of the show, for moderating it so well. Thank you, Dr. Vijay Rana, Nilima, and Aarush and Ayur. Thank you so much. Thank you, Vivek, Paul G, for connecting us to women as Chaya as well as Manoshi Sinha. Hopefully, we will have them again sometime later. And I want to just quickly say that Independence Day celebration continues at IIW, Inspiring Indian Women. Tomorrow at 7 p.m. UK time, we have hordes and hordes of talent displaying their the expertise in different skills. And there'll be songs and dances and instrumental, vocal, you name it. So it might end up about 4-hour show, because when we started compiling the videos, we came to know that we all actually have 40 odd videos at our disposal, registration. So we're not going to, you know, not play any. There's no audition. We're just going to play each and everything, whatever has come to our registration process. And so it'll be a long show, but in between of that long show, we are going to launch IIW outlet through the hands of our Honorable MP Bob Blackman, sir. He's already sent his speech to us. We are also going to have Lord Rami Ranger, and from the Indian High Commission, we have Mr. Mahesh Chawla, the first secretary. So we're looking forward to this big D day for us, IIW outlet. So ladies, what are you waiting for? Let's begin selling and increasing and expanding our clientele base. Thank you so much, everybody, from Inspiring Indian Women. Namaskar to all of you. Happy Independence Day tomorrow.
Thank you. Thanks.
Dhanyavad. Thank you.
Thank you very
I
Dhanyavad.
thoroughly enjoyed it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a ton.